God curses abusers. A study of Matthew chapter 18. Matthew 18. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in and acknowledge and cleave to me to stumble and sin, that is, who entices him or hinders him in right conduct or thought, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be sunk into the depth of the sea. Woe to the person on whose account or by whom the temptation comes. As I read this parable and judgment from the lips of Jesus, I imagine a young girl running toward the brilliant light of truth, of good and God, full of joy, excitement, and confidence. But before this little girl takes but a few steps, she feels a large foot brush against her leg, and she finds herself stumbling head first to the ground. So she tries again. She thinks to herself, perhaps if I take a different path to the light, this light I so long to embrace, maybe Mommy will not stick out her foot and trip me up this time. But once more, before she garners a head of steam, she feels that large foot kick her feet out from under her, and down she goes. This little girl tries again. After all, the last two paths she took may have been wrong, right? The light keeps calling. The light keeps drawing and tugging on her heart. So she takes another stab at it, this time from yet another path. Same outstretched foot, same stumbling into the dirt, same result. This scenario is played out over and over again until the child makes the inner adjustments necessary to survive this moral stumbling block everyone knows as Mommy. Did you have your feet taken out from under you when you tried to please the overseers of the household you grew up in? Did you have your feet taken out from under you when you tried to do good? Did you have your feet taken out from under you when you demonstrated an interest in God? Did you have your feet taken out from under you when you tried to make your overseers proud of you? Did you have your feet taken out from under you when you were simply being honest about your perceptions, your feelings, your thoughts? Did you have your feet taken out from under you when you communicated the slightest discomfort at behavior that you instinctively knew was wrong? Did you have your feet taken out from under you when you attempted to show affection toward anyone or anything, including a pet, These are examples of the morally darkened man or woman playing the illegitimate role of a parent, causing you to stumble, tripping you up, punishing you, castigating you, isolating you, mocking you, and terrorizing you, all because of this longing inside of you to follow after the path of righteousness in accordance with the dictates of your own conscience. These are examples of the price you paid for the slightest expression of your true self. This foot of stumbling used to trip up the child born into a household of narcissists comes in many forms. Sometimes the foot of stumbling comes in the form of a subtle slipper. The child is made to feel stupid, crazy, and inferior in front of her other siblings. She is compared to her less conscientious brothers and sisters in an unfavorable light. She is labeled misfit to members of the extended family and family friends. Her punishment for seeking after the light within her is isolation and exclusion. Sometimes the foot of stumbling comes in the form of a hardened leather boot. Physical, emotional, sexual, and spiritual violence is executed with cold-hearted efficiency in order to punish the child for even daring to think of following the path of her true self. Sometimes the foot of stumbling has the angular precision of a pair of stilettos. Words and actions that cut to the very core of the child's conscience. So deeply, in fact, that in many cases the child disassociates from her conscience altogether in order to avoid the shame instilled there by her malignant caregivers. Eventually, this child is confronted with an impossible situation. She can perceive the path of truth and good that is resident inside her own heart of hearts. She not only recognizes this path, she is compelled by the inexpressible force of her conscience to walk that path. Any attempt to enter this path she perceives inside her soul, however, is met with brutal, ruthless resistance from the very people she looks to for guidance on this inner journey. Let's look at Proverbs for a moment. Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, do not go on it. Turn from it and pass on. For the wicked cannot sleep unless they have caused trouble or vexation. Their sleep is taken away unless they have caused someone to fall. For the wicked eat the bread of wickedness, and they drink the wine of violence. This proverb illustrates quite vividly, I think, the dilemma faced by the conscientious child born and raised in a household of conscience-less narcissists. This child is faced with the torturous task of avoiding the path of the wicked while living in the household of the wicked. How does a child born into a family overlorded by the wicked not enter the path of the wicked? The conscientious child, through no choice of her own, through no fault of her own, is forced to comply with the wills of individuals who cannot sleep unless they have caused trouble and vexation. The conscientious child, through no choice of her own and through no fault of her own, must find a way to survive this camp of men and women who gladly eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. The conscientious child, through no choice of her own, through no fault of her own, is forced to comply with the demands of individuals who cannot rest unless they have caused someone to fall. This young child is that someone targeted to fall by these wicked individuals. And I sometimes wonder if this isn't why God seems to take personal responsibility upon himself for the welfare of the fatherless and the motherless. Those of you who have survived this hellhole with your souls and sense of self remotely intact are living miracles. You are the true heroes in God's book. Let's look at Matthew 18 again, this time from the King James Version. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones, which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe unto the world because of offense, for it must needs be that offense come. But woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. The word offend means trip, stumble, stumbling block. Strong's Greek Lexicon amplifies the meaning: to cause a person to begin to distrust and desert one whom he ought to trust and obey. We could just as easily paraphrase Matthew 18:7 to read as follows and not diminish the meaning of the verse at all. Woe to that man by whom a stumbling block comes. Woe to that man who causes one of these little ones to trip and fall. Woe to that man who causes one of these little ones to distrust and desert the one whom he ought to trust and obey. Now, I'd like to explore what Jesus meant when he used the word woe. We don't use that word anymore, at least not in the way Jesus used it. The word woe, in the context used by Jesus, means a ban or curse solemnly pronounced and accompanied by excommunication. It also means the denunciation of something or someone as accursed. Jesus pronounces a solemn curse on the man or woman who causes a little one to stumble from the truth. Jesus excommunicates the man or woman who causes a little one to trip and fall in their pursuit of good. In other words, God has absolutely nothing to do with such a man. The man or woman who causes a little one to distrust their God-given sense of right and wrong is denounced by Jesus as accursed and appointed to utter destruction. Jesus said it would be better for this man to swim with the fishes than to offend one of his little ones. The man or woman who deliberately, purposefully, and relentlessly pursued your soul is not looked upon by God with mercy. No, God absolutely detests them with a red-hot hatred. His judgment of those who abused you will make the mafia's treatment of those who dared betray their code of secrecy look like a picnic. Jesus pronounced a curse on the malignant, narcissistic abusers of the world. I say yes. Amen.